review of Ray Griffin's Above the Water's Flow, a podcast narrated by Dr. John Nicolay, managing editor of the Virginia Writers Project. Ray Griffin's Above the Water's Flow is a carefully structured poetic collection that unfolds as a meditative sequence organized around distinct emotional and philosophical states. Divided into sections: prologue, inspiration, jubilation, contemplation, remembrance, restoration, and epilogue. The volume constructs not a conventional sense, but a cyclical exploration of the human condition. The organization itself, as revealed in the table of contents, is essential to understanding the work. Each section clusters poems that collectively articulate a mode of being, creating a layered progression from sensory awareness to introspection, loss, and eventual renewal. The opening poems establish the central dialectic of the collection, the interaction between the external natural world and the interior life of the poet. In the Mountains and the Sea, Part 1. Page 2. Griffin presents nature as both stimulus and mirror, where the act of observation becomes inseparable from self-awareness. The kaleidoscopic colors of dawn are not merely descriptive but transformative, awakening the poet's sleeping muse. Similarly, Sunrise, page 4, frames the natural world as divine artistry, where the daily emergence of light becomes an existential prompt. New Day's birth inspires me with opportunities. The movement from perception to affirmation situates Griffin within a long tradition of nature-centered lyric poetry, yet his tone remains distinctly contemporary in its directness and accessibility. The inspiration section extends this logic. In Orchestra, page 7, the sea's rhythmic motion becomes a metaphor for musical composition, transforming an environmental observation into aesthetic reflection. Nature is thus not passive scenery, but an active collaborator in poetic creation. The section titled Jubilation expands the scope of the collection from solitary contemplation to communal experience. Poems such as Joy, page 28, articulate a philosophy grounded in relational bonds. Life's greatest joys are born from the love and grace of family. The shift in form, often shorter lines, more declarative phrasing, mirrors the immediacy of lived experience. In 42, page 38, Griffin reflects on enduring marital love, using seasonal imagery to underscore continuity. Daffodils emerge each year, paralleling the renewal of human connection. The poem situates personal memory within cyclical time, reinforcing the structural motif of recurrence that governs the entire collection. This section's emphasis on chosen family and friendship aligns with contemporary poetic concerns regarding community as a constructed, rather than purely inherited, entity. The tonal shift in contemplation introduces a more interrogative voice. Poems such as The Rape of Ukraine, page 122, and Virtue, page 127, indicate a widening of perspective beyond the personal and the natural toward the political and ethical. This movement reflects a hallmark of modern lyric poetry, the integration of public discourse into private reflection. The contemplative mode becomes less about harmony and more about tension between ideals and realities, between belief and collective experience. The section Remembrance introduces sustained engagement with grief and retrospection. In A Stillness, page 24, the poet confronts unresolved sorrow tied to the deaths of his parents. The poem's structure, measured, reflective, and cyclical, mirrors the recurring nature of grief. Each year, the guilt of not being there. Memory functions as both a burden and a ritual. The act of revisiting loss becomes penitence and, ultimately, a pathway to acceptance, as suggested in the poem's continuation, where nature provides solace and the possibility of forgiveness. The concluding sections reintroduce earlier motifs: light, water, cycles of nature, but now refracted through the experiences of loss and ethical awareness. Writing itself becomes restorative, as indicated by titles such as With Pen in Hand, page 170. The epilogue returns to liminal imagery, the edges of day and night. Page 206, suggesting that the journey of the self is ongoing, perpetually poised between states of becoming. Image and text, a dialectic of contemplation. The visual elements within the collection do not function as illustrations of specific poems, but as parallel meditative artifacts. For instance, the photograph accompanying the early section, page 10, depicts a solitary figure along a shoreline, evoking themes of isolation and reflection without directly corresponding to the adjacent text. This separation creates a productive tension. The images resist interpretive closure, reinforcing the inwardness of the poetic voice. Rather than guiding the reader, they suggest an alternative, private layer of meaning. Such an approach aligns with modernist and postmodern practices in which text and image coexist without a hierarchical relationship, encouraging the reader to inhabit a space of contemplation rather than resolution. Griffin's work is best within what may be termed, in my view, the lyric contemplative tradition, a mode characterized by introspection, attentiveness to the natural world, and an emphasis on the poem as a site of thought rather than narrative. This tradition finds clear parallels in the work of Mary Oliver, whose poems similarly use natural imagery as a gateway to spiritual and ethical reflection. Oliver's Wild Geese, for example, transforms observation into existential reassurance, much as Griffin's Sunrise, page 4, frames the natural world as a source of renewal. 1. Similarly, Wendell Berry employs landscape to explore community and moral responsibility. Berry's agrarian poetics, grounded in place and relationships, resonate with Griffin's emphasis on family and chosen family in Jubilation. 2. Griffin's frequent invocation of divine presence situates him within a devotional tradition that extends from metaphysical poets to contemporary spiritual writers. The explicit framing of God as master artist in the mountains and the sea, part 1, page 2, echoes earlier religious poetics, yet the tone remains accessible and modern rather than doctrinal. In this respect, his work bears comparison to R.S. Thomas, whose poetry interrogates the presence and absence of God within the natural world. While Thomas often emphasizes doubt and distance, Griffin tends toward affirmation and reconciliation, suggesting a more optimistic theological stance. 3. Including explicitly political poems aligns Griffin with contemporary poets who integrate personal reflection with public discourse. Seamus Heaney, for instance, frequently navigates the intersection of individual memory and national conflict. Griffin's The Rape of Ukraine, page 122, participates in this broader movement, where the lyric voice becomes a vehicle for ethical engagement. 4. While Griffin's work does not belong to a formalized school in the sense of a manifesto-driven movement, it can be most accurately described as part of the contemporary contemplative lyric or eco-poetic devotional mode. Contemplative lyric emphasizes introspection, meditation, and the unfolding of thought within the poem. Eco-poetic engages deeply with the natural world, not merely as setting, but as a source of meaning and ethical orientation. Devotional incorporates spiritual or theological reflection, often in accessible, non-dogmatic language. This hybrid positioning reflects a broader trend in late 20th and early 21st century poetry, where rigid categorizations give way to fluid, overlapping modes. Griffin's work exemplifies this synthesis, drawing from romantic, modern, and contemporary influences while maintaining a coherent and distinctive voice. Above the Water's Flow presents a unified yet multifaceted exploration of human experience, structured through thematic sections that guide the reader from inspiration to restoration. Its integration of nature, memory, community, and ethical reflection situates it firmly within the contemporary contemplative lyric tradition. The collection's distinctive use of images as parallel, non-illustrative elements deepens its introspective quality, while its engagement with both personal and public concerns aligns it with broader currents in modern poetry. Griffin's work ultimately affirms the poem as a space of reflection, where the self encounters the world and, in doing so, seeks understanding and renewal.